We are thrilled to have the National Association of Black Social Workers with us tonight. You will be hearing all about the association, how you can join and how you can support them. I just have to go over a few housekeeping items and then we will turn it over to them and it'll be all about them the rest of the night. So how are we going to interact? At the beginning, NABSW is going to be presenting, so you can interact in the chat. About halfway through, they're going to be taking questions or comments. We are asking that only Black social workers speak tonight. If you're not Black, you can participate in the chat. We encourage you to participate in the chat, but only Black people speaking tonight. So you can raise your hand with the raise your hand function. If you don't know how to raise your hand, because sometimes that happens, you can type in the chat. We'll be watching for you if you want to speak. So again, we're going to ask that only our Black social workers speak tonight. We are also going to be, if you're here and you're not Black, and you're like, how can I support National Association of Black Social Workers? We're going to be putting a link in the chat all night to donate. So we can absolutely support NABSW with our money and make sure they have money. If you're Black, join NABSW. You're going to learn how to join. You're going to learn where to join and what the association does. And I just want to remind everyone, this is not for CE. No continuing education is with us. So without any further hesitation, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Haley, the president of NABSW.
Good evening, how you all doing? My name is Melissa Haley. I am the 14th president of the National Association of Black Social Workers. It is my very favorite organization. It is the only organization that I'm a member of. And I joined NABSW 25 years ago as a student. I am a second generation social worker. And a second generation alumni from at Clark Atlanta University. So I stumbled on this righteous social work interaction about a couple months ago. I was invited to hear this discussion about racism and social work. So I had no intention of engaging in the discussion, but during the discussion, I saw Black students who attended Columbia University experiencing trauma in the classroom, what they were paying for. Trauma, paying to be discriminated against. It was absurd to me. I couldn't contain myself, and I had to speak on what I think that Black social workers need to know and be made aware of. Because 25 years ago as a student, there were Black social workers who said to me, it's important that you understand what Black liberation is, what Black social work movement is, and that you act accordingly. And acting as a Black social worker requires you to go way above and beyond the traditional call of ethics. We have a call of ethics that is 100% focused on the liberation of Black people. If you read our code of ethics, it says Black 20 times. And it says it 20 times because we're not a task force that's just working on Black folks for now. We're not a task force that's focusing on white supremacy. That's not our job. We didn't create it. White supremacy is something that exists in social work practice. Social work as we know it needs to end. The call to end social work as we know it is a real one, and it's profound. And the reason why it began 53 years ago, because competent Black social workers were not able to speak on the floor at a national social work conference about what needs to happen in the Black community. They were tired of being beneficiaries of racism in social work practice. They wanted to speak using their knowledge and expertise that we were not victims and poor people who needed to be helped. We were people who were being oppressed and speaking out about the oppression. And because we sought liberation, our cancel was attempted to culture. So cancel culture was a play on what we hear today, that when people don't say what it is you think you say, you try to eliminate them. So instead of trying to fight to be a part of the dominant structure, we decided that we were going to get on the right side of history as members of the National Association of Black Social Workers and use self-determination. So the principles of Nguza Saba, principles of Ma'at, things that you don't learn about in the classroom. The supremacy that goes on in social work education neglects to tell you about a Black social work movement at all. Before we started 53 years ago in New York City, in Philadelphia, in Detroit, in St. Louis, in California, all across the country, in North Carolina, that Black social workers were working in the field of social welfare, and they recognized the oppression that was being done. What we do in social work currently is teach people how to live in oppressed environments. What we're supposed to do as change agents is to liberate those environments. So my charge today, and I brought my friends from New York with me, is that Black social workers need to recognize there is an option, and that the evidence-based practices that we learn in the classroom have very little evidence in the Black community. The white supremacy that we talk about, the belief that it works for white folks, it automatically works for Black folks. So it's important that as Black practitioners who have done this for a very long time, that we speak our truth, right? That we recognize that we have the power and that we need to support institutions that are about liberation. So Brother Daryl Fraser is the past president of the Office of Student Affairs. He was a student leader in the National Association of Black Social Work, and immediate past president of the Richmond chapter. And Daryl is a New Yorker, and he is a Black social work male. He works in social work education at a university in Virginia and talks about what happens in the classroom setting and what are some of the challenges that we have with social work education. Daryl? I don't see you.
I'm right here.
All right, brother.
Good evening, everybody. And I want to say thank you, Melissa, for the introduction and the wonderful history of our organization. I'm going to talk a little about social work education, but I also want to talk a little bit about myself and sort of how I became a social worker and how I came to the NABSW. I'll say this. I start off with this quote that I saw the other day. It resonated with me. I can't remember who said it, but it says, a person has two educations, one that is given to them and the other is the one that they give themselves. And they say the second one is the one that matters the most. And I agree with that because that resonates a lot with me. My undergraduate degree was in psychology, right? Fresh out of undergrad, got a job working in the field. Thought I was gonna get my master's in social work, and my first job was working in the city of Richmond in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Richmond. At the time, had the highest murder rate, and it was a predominantly Black neighborhood, Churchill. Working with my psychology degree, I quickly recognized I was eager to actually get in the field, but that degree did not equip me for what I was able to see. Communities that didn't have grocery stores, and at the time, I didn't have the language for it. You know, we weren't using language like food insecurity and food deserts, right? But I saw those things and I had questions. I wondered why the community looked the way that it did, the schools looked the way that they did, and why was it looking like that in a predominantly Black community? I'm not originally from Richmond. I'm from New York, as Melissa said, from Littleton, Queens. And you know, even if I reflect on my upbringing in New York, you know, I grew up in a segregated neighborhood, right? Just the same way. It was a different part of the country, but same thing. Just racism going on, but it just looked different, right? Anyway, fast forward, like I said, I was working in the field and I came across a lot of different people, particularly in my building, who were social workers. And everybody was a social worker, everyone was an LCSW. But there was one particular person that drove me to this. She mentored me. We actually started at the same time. Her name is Charlene Edwards, Black social worker. She had got her degree from Howard. And the one thing I loved about this woman was she just had a good way of working with clients that was effective. She had this perspective, she had this energy. She was the one that told me to go back and get my master's degree in social work, and I did. She also was the one that told me to go to my first Black social work conference. So essentially two processes started at the same time. I started my master's education, which brought me to the trajectory to social work. And on the same side of that, I got introduced to an organization, the Association of Black Social Workers. Had no idea what either one of those things had in store for me. When I got to my first social work classes, that perspective, that biopsychosocial perspective, we were talking about racism in the classroom. I was like, ooh, didn't get this in psychology, right? We dealt with individuals and Freud and all this other stuff. That was the thinking that I had. But social work kind of gave me a different perspective. And then, ooh, got introduced to the Black Social Work Conference. I think it was 2002, 2003. I mean, it was nothing I ever seen like it before in my life. It was a conference of purely Black folks talking about Black things, but talking about the things I seen in the community that I was from, in the community that I was working in, and it was talking from the Black perspective, and I fell in love. That set me on the path. I don't separate my identity from the NABSW and social work. Those two things go together. I cannot separate those two things. So, saying all that, say in the organization, I was able to meet a lot of good people from all across the United States. I remember my first conference, I got exposed to Naeem Akbar. He was the keynote speaker. He was the president of the Black Psychologists, right? Prior to me leaving, and I will tell you this, I need to go back. My mentor, who told me to go back to school, told me two things, right? Before I went, as I was going back, she said, you need to read, Daryl. And I read, but she said, I need to read and learn about Black theorists, right? I needed to learn about Carter G. Woodson, W.E.B. Du Bois. She gave me an assignment. She told me, you're not going to learn these things in classes, but it's important that you. She told me it's important that I go back and incorporate some of that literature into sort of my studies and my readings, and I did that. And again, that was reinforced by going to the Black Social Work Conference. Going to the Black Social Work Conference, it affirmed my soul. It was the first time I ever put on a dashiki. It was the first time I ever seen just a Black conference from top to bottom, from the presentations to the way everything was run. It just affirmed something in my soul. So that energy, that spirit is what has been driving me since that time. It's given me the opportunity to look at myself different and learn and grow as a Black person, as a Black individual. It's helped and equipped me to better work in my community, to see the problems for what they are. I can't separate the social ills that we see in our communities from racism. That's the one thing that we know, we understand, is we can't separate our existence and our experience from that thing, because that's the thing that's been impacting a lot of the social issues that we see in our communities, in the communities. So anyway, fast forward to today, I am a professor at VCU School of Social Work. The one thing that also kind of undergirds sort of my teaching philosophy is also making sure that I instill sort of the concept of Sankofa, which I also learned through the Black social workers. And Sankofa means to go back and fetch it, right? So what I mean by that is going back and understanding history, going back and looking at history through honest eyes and honest lenses and understanding that, because I think oftentimes we make it seem as though these problems are that we see today actually began just yesterday, or we blame the victims, we blame people for the circumstances. But if we go back and look at history and understand the context of how things are occurring, then, and how they originated and how they started, then we can start to actually talk about how we can fix problems and issues. The Black Social Work Organization has taught me that. I also believe that education, the way that I was taught, I believe it wasn't the best way. When we look at social work education, a lot of things are taught from the Eurocentric perspective, right? And anything else that's introduced is sort of an aside or extra work, sort of like I was told I needed to, I didn't learn, none of my coursework taught me about the miseducation of the Negro. We didn't talk about books like that, which are very relevant, still relevant to today. We didn't learn about Black theorists like Kobe Cambone that actually talked about, could give us solutions to work in our community. So, saying that to say, social work education has to change. It's not just about what is being taught, because that's a part of it, but it's also about how it's being taught, right? Are we teaching people just to go back out into the communities and just, pick up where the other generation left off and do the same things to uphold the same systems? Or are we teaching people to think critically, right? And figure out how we can advance and change and build upon the past. The other thing is, who is teaching? When we look at social work education, I'm talking about social work education, right? A lot of schools, right? A lot of schools, there's schools today in 2021 that a student can go through 4 years of college and never have a Black professor, right? And that has a lot of implications for Black students and white students, right? For Black students, they need to see somebody with their face that can give them sort of the vision that they can do it. Happens in practice as well. But I would say even for white students, if they don't have Black, see a professor at the front of the class, that has downstream implications in understanding, for some white students, that's they may not have experienced person at the front of the classroom, or the first time of experiencing a person in authority is when they go into field education, and they have a Black supervisor, and issues can arise there, right? Because of the cultural differences. So there's a lot to social work education, right? So in terms of the formal way of education, there's a lot that needs to be done on that part. In terms of, again, like I said, what is being taught, how it's being taught, right? And who is teaching it. And then the other side of it is, what are you teaching yourselves? I'm a big believer, and this is what I also got from my mentor, as well as the NABSW, is, I have to take responsibility for what I know and what I don't know, and what I need to know. So I would say for everybody, for Black social workers, if you're a Black social worker, it's important, if you don't and hadn't read anything by any Black theorists, then you need to go ahead and do that. I would say the same thing for social workers of other races, white social workers, Asian social workers, indigenous social workers. That's important. That we learn more than just, what is taught to us. We need to understand the communities that we work in. We don't just go into communities, with white savior complexes, thinking that we're going to go in and save. We have to understand the communities. We have to understand, the culture within the community, the customs. We have to understand sort of who are the important people within the community, right? So we can join with them and not go do for or help. So there's a lot that needs to be changed in terms of social work education. I agree with Melissa in terms of we should be working out. I was told this years ago, we should be working our way out of jobs, right? And if that's not the goal, then the question I ask is, what are we doing?
Daryl, I definitely agree with that. Very often, I'm very clear when I'm sitting at the table, I'm not your client, right? So when I'm at the table, when you see a Black woman, you think I'm your client. I'm not. And I'm not the exception to your client. I'm the rule, right? So when you see a Black woman, you see me. And when we look at the dynamics in social work education, when you hear about Jane Addams as a saint, and she was not. She had racist tendencies, racist practices, and a superiority complex. She wasn't a saint. But you go through schools of social work and you don't hear about Ida B. Wells, who was a saint, who dedicated and risked her life. Fannie Lou Hamer, a change agent without a social work degree, was a saint. So what we are working on is, you know, put your PhDs, your LMNOPs, put all of them to the side, right? It's talking about humanity, right? And as a human being who is a change agent, as Black social workers, we understand the racism that is entrenched in social work education, from how much we pay in social work education. We pay more than white students for social work education. We have more loans. We have to pay to be taught by people who don't look like us. That's a challenge. It is even a bigger challenge if you can go all the way through school and not know how to take direction from somebody who doesn't look like you and respect their expertise. It is something that we must hold our schools accountable for, right? We also must hold them accountable for the tenure rate, for the graduation rate, right? So if Black students are not graduating in 4 years, if Black students are having challenges passing the test, it's not a problem with us passing the test. It's something wrong with the test, right? So I understand that the Black practitioners out there are making great moves, but the barriers, the systemic barriers that we have been against historically are because of the racist patterns that exist in the profession. Historically in New York, right? NABSW has a long history in New York. And coming to New York, because we have two presidents who from New York, one who called me today, and he wasn't happy that I'm here today, right? And the reason he wasn't happy, and because I'm African-centered, I care what he thinks, right? He wasn't happy that I was here today because the history of NASW and NABSW goes longer than my 51 years, right? It goes back before NABSW was formed, and there's some challenges with that. So in the spirit of Sankofa, it's important that we go back and fetch it, right? And look at the history of challenges that we've had getting to the table. And I'm not at the table to eat because I'm a country girl. I don't eat from everybody, right? My purpose for being at the table is strictly to turn it over, right? I'm here because something wrong with the table. We're here because we want to turn the table over, and we want Black people to know and Black change agents to know, no matter what your degree is, if you committed to liberation and about holding systems accountable, right? DMX, who was a son of New York, right? DMX was in headlines for I don't know how much, talking about his challenges, not talking about the systems who should be held accountable for his demise. He had problems in the child welfare system. He had problems in the criminal justice system. He even had bigger problems in the record industry that was supposed to save them. It's time that we stop looking on micro levels, right? And I understand people believe it's a lot of money in therapy, and I'm okay with that, right? But the issues have less to do with micro problems than macro corruption. And what we do as a body of social workers, if we really about change and liberation, to say, hey, we need to end this racism that we're benefiting from, and look at how we're causing the oppression that came to be. So in the spirit of Sankofa, I'd like to introduce Gloria Scott, who is the president of the New York City chapter. She has been a member my whole life. So it's real important to hear what Sister Gloria has to say.
Gloria, we need you to come off.
Yeah,
oh, there you go.
Yeah, thank you. I have to unmute. Thank you, Madam President. Yes, I'm a longtime member of the Association of Black Social Workers New York City chapter, and I am active on the national level as well. The New York City chapter started in 1967, as Melissa pointed out, even before that walkout in 1968 in San Francisco. The spokesperson for that walkout was George Silcott, who was the president of the New York City chapter at that time. And I just learned that a few years ago because I hear a lot about the pioneers of the organization, but I didn't know that George Silcott had been chosen as the spokesperson for that walkout. So it's always good to know more, learn more, and look into our history. So I say as the president of the New York City chapter, and I believe I'm the 8th president of the New York City chapter and the only woman to lead the New York City chapter, that I stand on the shoulders of great leaders, great people who are great activists. And so I try to continue in that vein. So the first thing I want to just say is one thing from our code of ethics. I regard as my primary obligation the welfare of the Black individual, the Black family, Black community, and will engage in actions for improving social conditions. So that is the motto I live by, the commitment I have. The motto of our chapter is community first. And our history is rich. In terms of how I came into the chapter, I'll just step back a little bit, is I was on a picket line to stop the cuts in daycare. And I ran into Alan Coates, who was one of the founders of the New York City chapter. And he said, you should join the Association of Black Social Workers. I didn't know about it, but I said, okay. And he directed me to Lenora Neal, who was the founder of our adoption program. And I've been active every day since. The other day, I was saying to my daughter, you really should get involved in the Association of Black Social Workers. She said, I've been involved all my life. You had me going to meetings. I had to go there to do my homework. She said, I have been involved all my life. So I have to say, okay, she'll come around. But it's a commitment. The New York City chapter, we've sat in to save hospitals. We've picketed a racist commissioner in social welfare, and so much so that she resigned. The members of ABSW went to her house and picketed on a daily basis. And so she finally just said, I have to give this up. And so that's the kind of history we have. And we started programs to respond to the needs in the community. We started our adoption council and referral service to dispel the myth that Black families will not adopt. We know that that is just not true. We have always taken in our relatives, friends, neighbors who needed a place to stay. And we were disillusioned by the system who really, their racist attitudes wouldn't give us the children and find ways to keep us from adopting formally, but we always informally adopted. So we wanted to prove that, and we went out and recruited Black families to adopt children. And we've been doing that since 1975. We started out as a volunteer program, and we are now a licensed agency for the state of New York. And we're still recruiting homes, we're still doing home studies, and we're still finding families who want to adopt, who will adopt, and continue to adopt. We started a senior center program in 1975 also, and we still have that senior program. It's a neighborhood senior center located in Upper West Side of Manhattan, and we provide for the elderly. We have, before COVID, because now our members can't come in, but we're still keeping in touch with them. We're contacting them by phone, doing wellness checks, giving them education, making sure they are food secure and getting what they need in terms of medication and giving them knowledge about COVID. But before COVID, we serviced 100 seniors every day who came in for activities, for food, for socialization, going on trips, and they call now. They miss it, and they want to, but right now we're not able to accommodate them at the center. We had 2 daycare centers that were started to provide for the community, one in Brooklyn and one in Harlem. So we've continued, and we will continue to do programs to reach out and do work in the community. Like I said, our motto is community first. And you have to be committed to the welfare of your community if you're going to be an active ABSW member. I say, you know, our president says something about this is not a spectator sport. And I think that that's really true, that you have to work, you have to be dedicated, and you have to make sacrifices to be a member of ABSW, but it's worth it because you're making an impact on your community. And I want to say one thing that Daryl mentioned about educating yourself, reading, and I want to just say that the National Association of Black Social Work has the Academy of African-Centered Social Work. I encourage members, and I encourage anyone who joins the organization to take the Academy of African-Centered Social Work. It's a one-year program, but it will really kind of negate all of the racist and Eurocentric education that you receive in the schools of social work. I have worked in schools of social work. I was an adjunct for 17 years. Most of that time was at Columbia University, and the other part, 4 years, was at Hunter School of Social Work. So I've been there. I know how racism impacts on the students. I know how racism impacts on you as an adjunct. You get challenged by students that wouldn't even think about challenging their white professor about who they are, what they know, and their credentials, and challenge you about what you're saying, because we're telling them the truth. They're going out, most of the students are going out to work in the Black community, and I have to challenge them on what they're doing, because they definitely need to be aware of what has to be done in our community and how to work in our community. That's important. So,
and when you're in different environments, Sister Gloria, you know, I know some of the things you said kind of broke up a little bit, but basically, you know, what we got in should be very clear is that the New York City chapter has active programs and have had active programs for a very, very long time, really debunking the racism in social worker. You know, if somebody tell you Black people don't adopt, I want you to just stop them right there and say, that's a little white lie, right? Because it is a huge white lie in the sense that Black people have been adopting other folks' kids since the slave ships, right? We take care of whatever children that we see. If I see you, you mine, right? It's the boundaries go right out the window. I'm not gonna let your child get hit. So the connection that we have and the commitment that we have to demonstrate what needs to be done in our community is very real. And as an adjunct at Southern University, you know, it is very different when I get students from other universities, right? I'm not going to be questioned. It's a difference between asking questions, and it's a difference about questioning me as a Black practitioner who's practiced for 25 years. And I know the difference. So I take the right to remain silent. When I don't think you respect my expertise, you need to learn from someone else, because I'm not going to beg you to get the knowledge you need to be successful in our community. It's important that you engage and that you reach out to learn what's different. Because if you go in there with what you read in those textbooks, it's missing a lot of things that will not translate well with your clients, right? That if you pass the social work exam, that means you're a good test taker. That does not mean that you're a good practitioner. And what we need is good practitioners and change agents in the community who are committed to liberation for people that they serve. You're not teaching people how to be better oppressed. We're teaching people how to liberate. And we work with other organizations, like-minded organizations around the country to help us do that. And Sister Dalphine, who comes from the Best chapter of Association of Black Social Workers. The Best Chester, she has done a whole lot of collaboration with us during this year through one of our sister organizations, Black Family Summit, and she's gonna tell us about those collaborations.
Thank you, Madam President. So I came to social work a little late. In 2011, I received my degree, my master's in social work. But I believe that I've been a social worker my entire life. Because starting at the age of 11, I participated in community organizations in Westchester, and I was doing voter registration and community activism at an early age. At 17, I traveled to San Francisco on the plane for the first time in my life to attend a family planning conference, because in Yonkers, where I live in Westchester County, I initiated the first teen family planning program in the country back in 1971. So I believe I've always been a social worker. It just took me a little while to get to the National Association of Black Social Workers, but I've always been a social worker, I believe. And I spent about 30 years working for the Department of Probation as a law enforcement officer in probation. And I retired in 2010 and went back to school to get a second master's, and my second master's was in social work. So last year was a strange year. It was, we had to elect new people, right? We were faced with either continuing with the person that we had in office, 45, or getting someone else that could better represent our needs. So we partnered with another organization, Black PAC, which is an independent Black-led organization that uses the power of year-round Black political engagement to change economic, judicial, and political systems. So in NABSW from around the country, starting in September to January, we participated in text banks and phone banks. And we probably, contacted well over 5 million people to change the dynamics of the election, to elect, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And over 100 of our members participated and was the backbone of this activity. And in addition to them, they brought in other folks from their churches and from their other social networks. And we built a really big community volunteer network, and with over 300 people. Like I said earlier, we engaged over 5 million people via text and phones. And we were basically successful in all the swing states. And we really, really, really dedicated time and attention in December to January in Georgia to make sure that we elected, a Black senator and a Jewish senator. We continue in political education with Black PAC on a regular basis, and we're working really, really hard for the HR1, SR1, HR and SR1 for the People Act and John Lewis Voting Rights Act, George Floyd Justice and Policing Bill, Infrastructure and Climate Bill, Hate Crimes and Student Debt. And we're still partnering with Black PAC on a regular basis. And that's pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting to be a part, for our organization to partner with other organizations, because collaboratively we can, make things happen. And I'm positive that collaboratively working together, we'll be able to, make changes that we need with the government right now.
Thank you so much, Sister Dalphine. And, in the last quarter of last year and the first quarter of this year, the 75 chapters of NABSW, we have 2 that are forming right now that we have in NABSW. We have connected with over 10,000 people through our meetings, through our activities, through our presentations. So we are consistently, we just did a film festival, or 3 different night film festival where we watched social work movies, and we had panel discussions for CEUs. We had nearly 100 people participate in this activity. We also had a workshop on autism, and everything that we teach, everything that we present are presented by Black practitioners. We are focusing on the Black community. We are talking about practices and how they work in the Black community. And so we focus and we do this kind of work. Right now, we're in the midst of our Wellness Warrior campaign, and we are fighting to be well as a community. And we really want to focus on showcasing our professionals and their expertise in an environment where others can learn and benefit. Sister Zakiya Newland, who is from the Nassau-Suffolk chapter of NABSW. She is the president. She is doing some dynamic work in the state of New York as an educator and is exemplary educator in the community. And I want her to tell you about what's going on in her area.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you again for this opportunity. This is a good conversation. The chat is hot. I'm trying to keep up with that, but we're going to be able to answer some of your questions and put more information in there in a moment. Let me just say a little bit about my story, and then I'll certainly get into some of the areas. So I'm originally from the Bronx, and I grew up professionally in Harlem, and now I'm in Long Island, but the journey in between has just been amazing when I think of how I was oriented to social work. So I went to Morgan State University, one of our premier HBCUs in Baltimore, and encountered my first social work class. The name of the class was The Black Family, and it was taught by our now ancestor, Dr. Elmer Martin. But Dr. Martin was not just a phenomenal social worker and social work educator. He was a builder. Him and his wife had the Great Blacks in Wax Museum in Baltimore, a wax museum that showcased the realities and the history of some of the people that you heard Brother Daryl talk about and that we know are part of our history. But what was so phenomenal about taking that first class, the first concept I think that I learned in social work was the Black family figure, and really just thinking about the dominant matriarchs or patriarchs or the role of extended family. And it was just a phenomenal experience. It grounded me in who I am, how I practice, the way I've journeyed through this profession. And so after leaving Morgan, I came back home to New York. I worked for a year in East Harlem, then I started my master's program at Fordham University, ultimately did some more good work in Harlem-based agencies. And I professionally grew up in Harlem with mentors and supervisors and coalitions and committees and even organizations like the New York City chapter that I joined, I think, soon after graduating with my master's from Fordham, and often felt a level of validation and support. Now, listen, I know that's not everybody's story, because I know that maybe you went to some institutions or at institutions now where you don't see yourself represented, where you have some struggles finding mentors and persons who can look like you know, speak into you, provide you with some affirmation. And trust me when I say the National Association of Black Social Workers as an entity, as an organization, provides that. Our conferences, second to none, not just because all Black people are getting together and we're learning together and sharing together.
You're muted.
You're muted.
I know it said the host muted me. I didn't do that, but that was an error. That's okay. That's okay. Let me finish my flow. Don't cut off my flow. So the conferences, just in terms of the quality of the scholarship, the quality of the practice wisdom, the quality of the educational value to how we come together and learn. Our guard is down a little bit. That allows us to learn, I believe, that much more better, right? And when I say that, it just is an open and honest exchange. We walk down the hall, somebody says, "Hey, queen, hey, sis." Yes, I'll take all of that, thank you, and extend it back when I see other persons, because that's just the environment, the climate. It lifts our spirit. It prepares us for when we come back home and we're in environments where we don't have that. Trust me, it's the fuel. I see our former national president, Tony Oliver, is on, and she would often call the conference the well, the homecoming experience that we would have, a well where we can be filled up in our own spirit so we can go out and do the work that we do and counter all of the issues that we counter. So I just wanted to give that bit of a background. I am, and I'm saying this for the students and all the other practitioners, because I know that representation matters. I am a tenured full professor who is the chairperson of the department at the Malloy College in Long Island. And I say that because when I look into the eyes of some of the students that come into my program who are struggling academically or who are taking issue with some of the things that may be happening in their classes, I recognize and hear from them how they appreciate seeing representation. And so I know that doesn't exist in many places. And listen, you want to catch me offline and get the story, I could share some stories, trust me. But I think it's important for us to recognize that we are as diverse as this profession is in how we approach it. And now if we don't find that diversity, then we have to seek it. Then we have to know who's speaking a similar truth, who is like-minded as it relates to the concepts of Black liberation, as it relates to African-centered practice, as it relates to how we frame ideas about community, as we recognize our presence and our absence in the literature, as well as in studies and other areas. So it's so important for us to recognize that. A great value that we operate in within NABSW is collaboration. So I'm going to share a few things about our collaborative efforts outside of what we do in our chapters. And yes, I am the president of the NASA Suffolk Association of Black Social Workers. I saw some of our members coming in, so shout out to us. Thank you for joining. And I just, recognize that listen, we are so strong when we work together. There is an entity I put in the chat, the Black Family Summit. The Black Family Summit is a collaboration of, I believe we're at 29 Black professional national organizations. I can't say all of them, but I know it's certainly NABSW, the Association of Black Psychologists, Black Psychiatrists of America, the National Medical Association, which is the Black doctors, the National Black Nurses Association, firefighters, veterans. I could go on, but the link is in the chat so you could see that list. And they come together annually for a conference, but also monthly to convene and to discuss positions and to strategize on initiatives that will lift some of the issues that the Black families are facing. Now, not just the nuclear family. Some of you, I said Black Family Summit, and you might be thinking in a very Eurocentric sense of just the family unit who's in your household and the picket fence and the dog and all of that. No, we mean family in the broadest sense of a definition, in terms of the family of communities coming together to lift up the issues that are impacting our well-being. So even just how we perceive constructs, can be filtered differently based on the lens that you come from. So Black Family Summit, all organizations that I mentioned, as well as others coming together to convene and to work and to strategize. And so when we think of the healing value of those types of organizations, we recognize that there's a call and response. There's an African tradition, there's a litany, there's a Black church tradition of call and response. So the call is our communities are in pain, our people are in pain, our society is in pain, and the response is what are we going to do about it? What programs can we deliver? So very recently, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the collective came together, said, we know what happens. We often hear and go by the mantra of when America gets a cold, Black America gets pneumonia. And so we need to deal with these disparities. And so they came together, they put their powerful Black brains together and designed a program and a proposal first for the Community Cares Listening Line. And what that is that comes from the perspective of these African-centered principles that provides a helpline for emotional support and resource information for first responders, essential workers, but particularly targeting, persons of African ancestry, because we know that the custodial staff, the janitorial staff, the building maintenance staff, the housekeeping staff, the grocery store clerks, that those persons who were working constantly through the pandemic, in addition to our heroes in the healthcare systems, but that the entire set of essential workers needed resources, needed support, but particularly could benefit from those that were framed from an African-centered perspective, that valued community, that speaks to the healing power of hope, as well as providing listening with empathy. So we crafted a program based on these principles. That's what NABSW does. We look at an approach to our programs that focus on lifting, healing, empowering, building, and sustaining the efforts in our communities. So I also wanted to say, you heard Daryl, and he was putting into the chat several theorists and persons who we could read. There are 3 seminal works that I'm going to show you a picture of. So when I pull up my screen, I want those of you who are interested in this, and hopefully that's everybody, take out your camera, snap a picture. It'll last longer than trying to write all the names down, so that you can see 3 books that are seminal works as it relates to Black social work. Ask yourself the question, if you heard of the authors, if anybody ever presented their work, and if not, okay, but now you know better, so you can do better. So bear with me one second as I pull up this slide, and then I'll be concluding my comments after that. Hold on, wait a minute. Let me do the right way. And okay, let me pull up. That was Black Pack. I put that in. Here is the slide. So let me get it so you can see bigger. So these 3 seminal works, the one on the left is a little fuzzy, but that's Social Work in the Black Experience. That's by Dr. Elmer Martin, my first social work professor. And he talks about practices on, you know, the way we understand our needs in our community. So that's one seminal work. A second one, the middle one, Righteous Self-Determination. That is the NABSW story by Dr. Patricia Reed Merritt, who's a faculty member at an institution in New Jersey. And she wrote our story. And there's a previous book by Garland Jaggers, one of the founders of NABSW, that presents our story. It was the first book, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa, you know, that presented our history. But Righteous Self-Determination, a more recent work. And then Iris Carlton Lene, you could look at this book in terms of the empowerment tradition and social welfare, looking at leadership, African-American, I can't see this, the whole title. Hold on, let me move this thing out of my way. Okay, African-American leadership, but really looking at Black pioneers in social work and in social welfare history, people who you probably have not heard about, but you'll hear about people. You'll also hear about some of the movements and organizations like the National Urban League and the first Black HBCU School of Social Work, which is Clark Atlanta
University.
Yes, Clark Atlanta. I know, and I know you got a connection. That's where you went to school, right? Did you go to Clark Atlanta? Okay, but still recognizing that these are seminal works, and we want to make sure that you're aware. So I'm gonna come off screen share in a minute. I'm gonna give you another couple of seconds if you need to do a quick snapshot, and then you can get this on repeat because it will be recorded. So I'm gonna come off in 3, 2, 1. Okay, but again, just recognizing the value of our voice, the value of our presence, and most, well, equally importantly, the value of the validation and affirmation that we provide as an organization. So with that, I'll end. I know we're going to have some questions and answers. So I'll pass it back to you, Melissa, and we can go from there.
Well, I will also say, as African-centered social workers, we don't conform to European time models, right? So in a European time model, we end in 5 minutes, but in African-centered model, you go until the spirit tells you to end, right? We learned that from Dr. Morris FX Jess. So those of you who are on European time, you got about 5 minutes, but the rest of you all who want to entertain some questions, we're going to be African, and we always be African, and we're going to definitely stay in that. So in the spirit of my auntie Maxine Waters, I'm reclaiming my time, and we will move forward with whatever questions that you may have. And it's important that you know that we are not an anomaly, that we are a group of people from all over the country, right? And I see that we got Sister Jackie from Colorado who is on here. I saw Dr. Cooper, who is from Widener, on here. I saw Mildred Council, who's from North Carolina. Sundara Mallory, who is our recording secretary from Houston. Damien, behold the green and gold from Norfolk State University. I see Sister Lily, who is from the Akron chapter. I know we have our past presidents. Some of them are on here. I see the Chicago chapter president, Tiffany Johnson. I see members here. I saw Sister Shanti, who was a star at our Kimbe Film Festival. So we have NABSW members across the country, from Boston to the Bay. We are like minds. We are not originals. We are Black people who love Black people and believe in liberation. And as Sister Gloria says, I believe that liberation is not a spectator sport. So if you're sitting there looking at somebody else to do it, it'll never get done. It's our responsibility as practitioners to do the work that needs to be done. So now, as I understand, we generally ask questions in this forum verbally. So anybody with a hand raised who has a question, and I have to say hello to Sister Melanie Funches. She was one of our keynote speakers years ago. She's from Rochester. I love seeing you. We want to get reconnected in Rochester. We also have a Buffalo chapter as well. Any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
My name is Nicole Beard. I am part of the Simmons University chapter. I had my own, but then I joined with the Simmons University chapter. One of my great questions is books that I can use to kind of help while I'm going along with the studies, because as you know, the methods that they use and the principles that they teach are not focused on African perspective. And so sometimes I find that the models and the principles that they want us to use don't really apply, or it's just not really helpful. So I'm trying to find books that I can use to go along with their books to help me out. And do you have any suggestions?
Well, I think that Sister Zakiya gave you the NABSW starter kit, right?
Okay. Yes.
Start there. If you start there, that'll give you the foundation. It also have references that are in that information. But I also think you should challenge your professors. You know, just like I did with my daughters from K through 12. You know, they would send us these lists of pioneers. They send us these lists, and it's nothing but white people on there, right? And so I say to them, it's nothing that you are teaching Black people haven't mastered. Nothing.
Right.
So
Right.
you need to do a better job of going into your educational arsenal to demonstrate what Black people have done to liberate this movement, right?
Okay.
So when your professor is giving you, and then when you look at these books and they got, you know, one portion of a chapter on Black feminism, right? And they got one portion of a chapter where you're going to see Audre Lorde and Ida B. Wells. You're going to see one little paragraph here and there. You need to challenge your professors about what is available and why they don't have information that's broader. They're being paid to teach you. They need to get educated on Black social work as a movement and be clear that no matter what they learn, they're not the experts, right? And so what the danger, what happens is that, you know, they read a couple books and then they become the experts. They teaching us about DEI, right? They teaching us about African-centered practice. So it's important that you understand that you have to get the knowledge, because you got to make sure what's coming to you is correct. So I would say start with those books. If you go to the National Association of Black Social Workers webpage, we featured Black social work pioneers, over 15 of them, where we told their stories because they're valuable to us. And we need to make sure that our practitioners know that we've been doing this. Clark Atlanta University is 101 years old, older than most of the schools of social work in this country. So 101 years old is a long time to be teaching social work in the Black community.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And I would just say there's a recent book on Clark Atlanta's history by Al McCartan. And Al McCartan has been a member of NABSW as well as NASW and a former New York City chapter president. So I'll probably look for that so I can put that in as well.
Okay.
Brother Kofi.
And there are, Daryl has put a list of books in the chat also.
So
okay, I'm gonna look on the chat.
Check the chat. Brother Kofi, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to know about thank you for having this program. I just want to know about the resources and the programs that would that involve being active. Will it be posted on the website and resources, or it can be emailed to me personally?
Right.
Or do a newsletter email? They can be, right?
If you're a member, if you're not a member, I need you to change that. And when you
I'm a
become
member.
okay, if you're a member, what chapter?
New York.
New York. So when you're members, you should get all of the information. We have email blasts coming out almost bi-weekly, 3 times a week. We have them coming out with what the programs are. And our Wellness Warrior campaign is very intentional. We have activities, we have presentations, we have opportunities every month, most of them for CEUs as well. So we definitely have those opportunities. You can go on our Facebook page, the National Association of Black Social Workers is the name of the Facebook page, or you can go to NABSW Live and you will see the activities as they're coming up. We just did one on social media and social work. We have the Black Man's Lab coming up in June, because June is Black Men in Social Work Month. So we feature Black men in social work, and we do those kind of activities. So we really want you to get engaged, and you can always email me at president@nabsw.org and say, look, my chapter not sending me anything, and I'm gonna call them. I'm gonna make sure that they do.
All right, thank you.
I just said in the meeting the other day to please check the national website on a regular basis for the things that you so that you don't miss anything.
Definitely. Any other questions? I know it's some in the chat. I'm just not that nimble.
I had a question. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can.
I can't seem to get my picture up.
I can hear you.
But, okay. I was so glad to hear you use the word liberation. And why do you think Black liberation is not being discussed or talked about anymore, considering all that's happening in this world? And the reason I say this, I was going on the bus one day, and the bus driver was one of my former clients who said, thank you. She said, boy, did you liberate me. I got my own job. I can take care of my own. Things like that, when people feel like somebody understood that I needed to be liberated. And why don't people talk about it in those terms anymore?
Well, there is a benefit to Black people being clients, right? So when we stop being slaves, then the trick was to be clients either via the prison system, the child welfare system, some other systems. So there is a profit base off of poverty, right? To keep people oppressed. And then usually the opposite of oppression is assimilation, which is equally a problem, right? Where we're trying to adapt to a culture that is not designed for us, right? And so there is no talk about liberation, because liberation requires that you turn the table over. It requires that we change social work as we know it. It requires that we dump the licensure exam. It requires that we do some uncomfortable things, looking at the tenure rate. It requires that we call out racism, and that's uncomfortable, right? But I'm comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Because I'm not your client, and I'm not there to be a recipient of your services. I'm here for you to be a benefactor of my expertise, and you're welcome, right? And so because I'm here, my goal is about freeing myself. And if you look above me, Sister Brew, and I know that you know that you will see a scroll in the one hand, that's the education, right? But the weapon is in the other hand, because we have to fight for liberation. Nobody is going to give it to us because it's too much profit in oppression. There's too much profit in discrimination. But I think we need to use those words, because my concern is we're teaching people how to be permanent clients, right? We're teaching people how to be permanent beneficiaries, as opposed to them having a treatment plan that includes liberation, right? That should be on your treatment plan. And on your treatment plan, there should be some steps to liberation. And that's very seldomly there. Treatment plans are about coping, they're about adjusting, but we need to talk about how to free ourselves from the oppression.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions? Do we have any other questions?
I have a question.
I have a question. This is Carolyn McCarvey from Jacksonville. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I was trying to get the information on the Academy of African Central Social Worker that's on the website. Somebody answered in the chat that it's on the website, but I'm having a hard time finding that.
Do you know Jackie Nash?
The Academy that the first,
Miss Carolyn.
I do know Jackie.
Jackie Nash is the
Miss
president.
Carolyn.
Yeah, look, she's the president of the Jacksonville chapter. If you can connect with her, she can help you connect to the academy. To be a academy, we have reached our number for attendance for this year, but I say apply. You know, somebody may drop. You never know, but I would definitely apply for the class. And this will be our first Zoom online class, but we're looking forward to the experience. We have some great sages. Our premier sage is Dr. Colita Fairfax, who was acknowledged by the 1619 in Norfolk in Virginia, and she is our premier sage. Dr. Jerome Sheely is a sage. Dr. Kwandu Bernie Gallman is a sage. So we have some people who have been doing this. Dr. Iris Carlton Lene, the writer of the book, is also a sage. So you just have an opportunity to learn from people who have been committed to this work for a long time. I heard another question. Was there another question?
I had a question.
I'll get in touch with you.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Let me turn on this mic so it doesn't seem like I'm trying to be
I can hear you.
Most of my question is like comment/questions because in social work as a Black student, I find that in transitioning from BSW to MSW and now into the workforce, there's a lot of oppression that happens with how information is shared and how information is withheld from Black students, from Black professionals entering into the workforce. More specifically, I got an offer to work where I was placed at, and I don't know if I might take it, but it was awesome to get that offer. But when I started research, I'm Jamaican, so I'm not from America, so a lot of things are new to me, and I'm learning a lot. So I don't have like the network and connection as some people might have. But when I say that information is being censored and withheld in some way, it's where I'm trying to find basic information, like what's the pay rate for somebody who is coming out of school and going into the field, and to make sure that I'm not being exploited. Now, I am being recruited by a Black person who is working in the department, but at the same time, I'm the person responsible for my own interests. So whatever they're working with could be for the sake of the organization, not for the sake of me. So I'm wondering how, and I actually asked two faculty members. One is the director of the program for undergrads, and another one is a faculty in that works within the community in anti-oppressive and anti-oppressive framework and abolitionist framework centered. So, but they don't have the information, or they don't want to give the information. So I'm wondering, why is information so held on to as if it's like a cookie in a jar that you don't want to finish, so you don't share it? It happens among Black peers, as well as it just happens where there might be exploitation happening, but if the person who's experiencing it might not even know that they're being exploited because they don't have the information. So
it's real important. And what you said, and I'm going to answer your question, was so important that, you know, even Black social workers withhold this information, right? And I call those assimilators, right? And there is a difference between having a Black social work experience, right? That what we're talking about through the the National Association of Black Social Workers. Just being Black and a social worker doesn't give you that same education, knowledge, and depth. It's completely different. Because if you graduated from Columbia and you never had a Black professor and you never learned about Black education, you graduated from an Ivy League school and with other Black professionals who still have not had the Black social work experience. experience, right? So it's important that you seek out that experience, because what you're talking about is basic mentoring that you can get in a chapter, right? That you can talk to somebody, just like I told Sister Carolyn to call Jackie Nash, right? Because that's somebody who I know in Jacksonville was in our chapter. You need to connect with people who are in these chapters, and I don't know what area you're in, because they can mentor you and help you ask those questions. But there are some questions you should ask when you're being interviewed. You should ask them, is your pay rate the same for all social workers for this position? You should ask that. Is there a difference in pay rates because of, grade point average, university? Because if you work for me, whether you went to Southern University, whether you went to Walden University, Tulane University, or Columbia, you're gonna have the same starting salary at a CC2, CC3, CC4. It's not gonna change. So that's a question you should ask, and you should hold them accountable for their response. Because if you find that you paid significantly less with somebody with your job who has not been who's been working there for the same time, then you need to challenge that. So I'm glad you made the distinction that all Black social workers don't have the Black social work experience. And that is my sole purpose for being here, is to introduce many Black social workers to an opportunity to broaden your knowledge base and connect with social workers who can help with liberation work and to end oppression in the work that we do. Because that's what we're about, not maintaining the status quo. We're really about ending social work as we know it and making some long-term changes in social work practice to ensure that diversity, equity, and inclusion is at all levels of social work practice, not just in direct service, in social work management, in administration, in program development, in resource dissemination. We want to make sure that those opportunities are available. So I recommend you connect with one of these chapters that are in your area and seek mentorship so they can help you as you graduate and you progress, because you have opportunities to have clinical supervisors and other people who can support you in your endeavor.
Can I get in on that a little bit?
Sure.
Melissa, I agree. I think, that's what NABSW, that's what Richmond Association of Black Social Workers does, is that we provide mentorship, networking, and that's one thing I think a lot of Black students end up missing out on. I do recognize that oftentimes, like if you're joining an organization, it is extra work, but I want students to understand that, you're investing in yourself. When you go to a conference, yeah, you still have work to do, but you're investing in yourself. Taking the time to go to meetings and networking, that's you investing in yourself. The other thing too I wanted to stress is that, now that you're in the workforce, and I know a lot of my seasoned colleagues and even recent graduates can recognize that, there's a lot of trauma that happens when you are working in organizations, when you're working with your people, and the vicarious trauma that comes with that, or you're working in an organization. You may have come from a predominantly white educational institution, and you're working in an organization that services predominantly Black clients, and administrators and supervisors, they're predominantly white, right? There's trauma that comes with that. And I think I want to add to that for even the white social workers that are on this call, is that, not only do Black social workers have to deal with that, they also have to deal with issues and problems in the workforce, right? So it's not enough just that we're out here, trying to advocate for clients, but there needs to be some advocacy for your Black coworkers. If you're working for Black people, I think sometimes if you're the only, sometimes we can fall victim to being the only, right? You're the only one at the organization, and they'll tout you as, we have representation. We got one Black person as a Black supervisor. It's bigger than just who is there. It goes deeper than that, like Melissa is saying, right? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done on all levels.
So, if there's one last question, we'll take one last question.
Melissa, it looks like there are 4 people with their hands
Okay,
raised.
I'm sorry, well, I can take 4 questions. I don't see any of them, so whoever's first.
Let's go with Dr. Renata.
All right, Dr. Renata.
Hello. Good job, ABSW. So there are a couple of things with the, someone said everybody, something in reference to skin tone. So the sister that was looking for the guidance and the mentoring, those kinds of things. Some things you have to take the initiative to do yourself. Everybody has a pay scale, so you need to check that out yourself and not take somebody else's word for it. You definitely need a mentor to help you navigate the systems, but there are no impossibles. Everything is possible if you want to do that. And then I see a lot of people commenting about macro. Macro is very, very interesting to me because that's where the policies are made and that's where we need to be. However, some people can, many cannot do macro unless you know about service delivery at the micro, and it's more than what's in the book. So you can't talk to policymakers about a policy if you don't know what the clients actually are experiencing and what they need. And you can't get that from another book. You have to get that from the client. So you have to talk about where do you get that from. And I do know that NASW, NABSW, everybody has an organization. Everybody has a national issues or legislative issues. So you have to be aware of all of those things. And I know it sounds wonderful when people say they want to do macro, but you also have to have a skill set for that as well. It's not just something you do, it's something that you live, just like you do social work. So social work, it is a, as Melissa always says, it's a verb. It's a verb. You have to do something. It is not that clients come to you and you can heal them and save them. Clients come to you to be empowered. If you're not empowered, you can't help the clients. And it's not about helping them as much as it is empowering them. And when you see people who look like you, that means you're understanding that spirit that you have with you of the ancestors and our people carries you in there. So people who always, my students say, why do you want to be a social worker? I want to help. Everybody you talk about helping, they don't want your help. They don't need your help, and they will gladly tell you you can't help them. So you have to know the reason. So the sister Nordia, you need to know how to communicate with people that you need some help. And it's not that people are always denying you. How are you asking them? How are you letting them know you need them to mentor you? You need the information. And sometimes students have a tendency to act like they've learned everything because they took 2 classes in social work.
Well, say that.
So you gotta come on about it and ask for help if you need help.
And Sister Renata, I do agree. You know, I definitely agree with what you're saying, because you can tell somebody who's never done the work. You can listen when they talking, you know, sometimes I'm talking to a counselor, you know, well, maybe we can build more if you document, you know, if y'all document in the home. No, I can tell you never done the work, right? Because if you're going in some of the communities, you're not going in there with laptops. They don't have Wi-Fi. You're not taking hotspots. You're there to try to heal people. You billing is something that has to be done, but you're there to try to do the work. When you walking in there with people and you got your forms in hand and you got your GIPRA with 23 pages and a whole bunch of questions, look, people who really hurting, they're not trying to answer 23 pages of questions. So what you need to learn is the tool. So you're not there, you know, checking off boxes and writing down. You need to go there in the tool. So the first 5 pages, you can answer those questions just by having a conversation with somebody, right? I can talk to you. Then when I leave, I can fill out the paperwork. It's not about checking off the boxes. It's about making genuine relationships and connections. And so my concern is that too often when I'm in a classroom and 50% of the people want to be clinicians, right? You know, because that's what we think the money is. It's in clinical work. Well, yeah, it is, but you still got to bill every hour. So how many hours you going to bill? You're going to bill 80 hours a week. You're going to bill 90 hours a week, right? So what you're really looking at is we're trying to eliminate problems, not help people to address them. So I think there's room for both. You can work on a micro and a macro level, but I totally agree that you need to master micro practice in order to make macro change. I think that is extremely important to be able to do that work. And some of the best work you can get is working in child protection and child welfare. If you work child protection 2, 3, 5 years, you know the job, you know the work, and you really have some real connections with what that work looks like. And people who've done it for 10, 15
Absolutely.
it's a calling in their lives because they have really adopted this as a calling and really have done great and tremendous work with that discipline. I'm sorry, it's another hand.
Yes, we have Lauren P.
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I am here in the state of South Carolina, and I have a couple of questions. One is, who is over the chapter here?
In Columbia?
Yes, in Columbia.
Columbia has an amazing chapter. Christina Freeman is the president of that chapter. They have an amazing chapter. They're doing some great things. We have a past president, Joe Benton, who's in that chapter. Somebody in that chapter just wrote a book, Dr. Gallman. It is an amazing chapter in Columbia. And I hope, if you can drop that in the chat, or you can email me and I'll connect you with her. You'll love that area.
Okay, I would certainly appreciate that, because one of the things, I'm originally from North Carolina, and I am a clinical social worker, but I have been able to work on several different aspects of social work. It's what I love to do. It's what's in my heart. A lot of my background has been mostly in healthcare, and I deliver therapy, but I have my own style of doing it, and it's worked out well. One of the issues that I have found with working for organizations is the fact that when you are talking about policies and procedures and how to conduct things, and also protecting your license, because we all know that, we have to work hard to get there, especially being a person of color, African-American, there is a spirit of a threat that comes along with having all of this information. And so I've recently experienced, job loss on multiple occasions for coming in, knowing the information, delivering on that information, doing SWOT analysis, doing needs assessment. And it's this idea that you know too much, you have too much information, give it to us, we'll carry it out and you can go home. And so really understanding and having that protection to some extent, or some type of mentorship and guidance on how to navigate that while still not allowing self-betrayal, because I'm not a person who believes in self-betrayal. I know who I am, but it has become very difficult to do that and deliver that type of service, especially in a leadership role. We have nurses and other folks who are taking over positions and managing social work. When you have the skill set, you have the knowledge. But if, on a cultural aspect, and being an African-American, it's almost as if there's this idea that you need to make yourself small in some type of way to even get yourself to that type of position. So I'm just wondering, what guidance would you have, in that aspect of things?
Well, I'm gonna tell you, I'm probably the most unpolished president of the National Association of Black Social Work, right? So I work every day to try to be a lot more polished, right? I feel like I've done a good job, right? And this is about as polished as I get. And I will say this, is that one thing I learned at the National Association of Black Social Workers, you're not on the right track until you get fired, right? So once when you're on the right, and I learned that at a conference, right? And they say, when you get fired, you know you're doing the right thing. And I promise you, the next week when I came back from NABSW, I got fired. I was like, yes. I thought I came home to my husband. I said, I got fired today. I must be doing the right thing, right? So yes. It's a good sign that you are definitely speaking truth, right? When you are speaking truth, people don't want to hear that. Listen to me. I run a managed care organization. Listen to me telling MCOs. I run a mental health rehab, and I'm telling MCOs. It's no evidence that works in the Black community. They don't want to hear that, right? They want to stop paying you. Well, show me why you say this works, right? So what you really have to do and surround yourself with people, like I say, who can nurture you. In South Carolina, and I sent you my email so I can connect you, because that is a liberated chapter with some people who don't know quit. You know what I mean? They are really connected to that work. And New York is the same way. So I think that you have to continue to speak your truth. And the one thing that helps you more than anything is competency, right? When you know your stuff, you know what I'm saying? When you know your stuff, it's real hard for people to challenge you. You know what I mean? When they come to you and they say, well, I need some evidence-based practice. I say, well, I need some evidence that it works. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So when you come back with those those responses, and as a national organization, we need to challenge those responses. I'm not telling you don't study for the test. You need to study for the licensure test. You need to do what you have to do. But at the same time you studying for the test, I'm telling them the test is racist. When I know great social workers are not passing the test, most, people don't want to say, I didn't pass the test 3 times. I didn't pass the test 4 times. Well, especially if you've been practicing, right? If you've been practicing for 3 to 4 or 5 years in the Black community, you know none of that stuff works, right? So when they tell you, you got to think like a white girl to pass the test, I'm in trouble. I don't know how to think like a white girl. That's not part of my construct, right? So when I got to change who I am to pass your test, that lets me know it's a challenge. And believe me, I didn't make that up. They will tell you when you're studying, you have to think very linear. You have to think very European. You have to think, a client confronts you and the answer is call your supervisor. Oh no, that's not my response when a client confronts me. It's not to call my supervisor. My response is to communicate with my client, try to de-escalate the situation, but I'm not calling Susie to say, what do I do? I know what to do, and I'm gonna do that, right? So how do we change? How do we at the same time do what we need to do, but on the other end, say we're gonna tear this down? And that's why you need collective work and responsibility. And that is one of the principles of Kwanzaa. It is not a Melissa thing, right? This is not a Melissa, this is a we. I represent squares all over here. And when I'm speaking with the we in mind, because some things I may think personally, but collectively, what we need to do. So live the principles in Nguzo Saba. That is my lifestyle. It's not Kwanzaa to me. It's the way that I live my life as a strong Black woman. And the only time strong is a problem is when it's in front of the word Black woman. When you're strong with everything else, it's great. Who don't want to be strong? But when you're a strong Black woman, that's a problem. To me, it's a compliment. And so that's how we have to operate in our constructs in terms of what is real to us in our lives. Zakiya, we got another question?
We do. Yep. Jacqueline, Lucian.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. I'm real old school, pushing 80.
All right.
Walked out of class at UCLA. We were the first class that had about 23 students, and we really made a difference. Did my master's thesis, a generational study of the Black family, so I dealt with all those dynamics. And I need to publish my thesis because it is still relevant. The other thing is that we're really blessed to have this technology. We need to take advantage of it. I study marketing and branding and all that stuff, but I just signed up for another class a day for $2,400. We need to learn how to make money ourselves and our organization to make money in a big way. And then when we get our clients straight, help them be able to transition to how to make money. And the reason why I'm saying it is because the more education I got, the worse it got. And I ended up leaving my job when I was 49 years old. And I haven't worked since. And I can say that I probably made over $5,000 today. So really what I'm saying is we need to be able to not only try to find a job, but make a job and make money to sustain ourselves.
I agree with you, Sister Jackie, so much. That's the one thing, social workers will tell you, I'm not good at numbers, right? I don't like numbers. Well, somebody is counting them numbers on the work that you're doing. Somebody is making a lot of money off the work that you're doing, and they don't teach us that in social work school. And it's very likely that I can create programs working for a predominantly white organization. They use my resume, use other people's resume, all of that stuff, get multi-million-dollar contracts. But if I were to step outside on my own with those same methodologies, with the same resumes, because I don't have that 100-year history, because I don't have that 75-year history, I don't have the opportunity to do what needs to be done. And if you ever ran a mental health rehab, you know one audit can take you out of business, right? You know, they call 20 of your clients and they take 6 months to go line by line by line to find out, oh, you didn't put a stop time here, I want to take back $10,000. It's real easy to put people out of business. So learning the administration of social work and learning where the money comes from. How does the organization that you work for make money off the work that you do? They do 100%, whether it's administration fee, where they're making 15%, 10% off of what you're doing right off the top. There is a way. A nonprofit doesn't mean that they don't make money and that they don't generate money. They do it very nicely and they know how to do it financially. Yes, Sister Jackie.
Yes, I want to say that we're in the social work bubble. Okay, I straddle the social work bubble and the finance bubble. And one of my best teaching is I came to on my own dime. I went to DC and I did a course on how to buy property and the tax structure and everything, and it was filled up. And when I came back the next year, people were upset because I didn't do it again.
Right.
So what I'm really saying is, and then I'm on all these other, I'm on all these other seminars. And these people are making money with courses and their content. And I mean, it's really huge. So maybe I need to kind of share with people what I'm doing there.
You most definitely can. You can email me. I'll put my email, I'll give you my email. Please send me that information because we definitely want to continue to share this information. We are, as National Association of Black Social Workers, we are talking about wellness, financial health, mental health, community, organizational. So wellness is all over. You know, happy is more, you need to be financially sound. We do a lot. We help our clients with budgets. We help our clients with other things. We have to help someone else. Zakiya, do we have another question?
We do. So Deborah Williams, who's been hanging out with a raised hand for a while. Then after that, Natiri, if that's okay. Nicole, I know you were up before, so I don't know if your hand is still up or if you have a question. So let's go to Deborah really quick and then Natiri.
Yes, and Nicole still has a question.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hotep, everyone. I am a social worker in Columbia, South Carolina. And I know that the group here has been doing a lot of very good work. But one of the issues that I have is with working with the government organization and finding a lot of what the young lady who just spoke going on. And one of the biggest issues for the social work there in trying to, the social workers, I should say, in trying to establish themselves the credibility as therapists who do not necessarily deal with issues in the same way that white social workers do. For example, we are not allowed to discuss, and I know this is in social work in general, but allowed to discuss religion, but the majority of the people that we serve have, you know, their existence or a lot of their background in religion. They pray. And so if you're able to approach their issues from that perspective, then you're able to connect. But one of the issues that I have is that we struggle, as I said, for legitimacy in these organizations because we're not given the credibility. And one of the struggles we have is trying to get to garner the trust of the Black clients that we work with. And to the comment of the other young lady who spoke, we need to find a way to monetize the experiences that we have, the knowledge that we have. And so I'm wondering if there will be, because I've only attended one NASW conference, some years ago, but if it's possible, I would like to see a segment at the conference that allows social workers who are successful at having their own practices where they are, for example, approved to accept HMO like Blue Cross and so on and so forth, to help us understand how to get ourselves, into independent practice and be successful with social media and marketing and all of those things. That way we can disconnect ourselves from, the restrictions that we have in these larger organizations.
Well, our conference, the national conference, the conference is Wellness Warriors, the fight calls for social work action. And actions is an acronym, which is accountability, collaboration, transformation, innovation, outcomes, networking, and solutions, right? And so what you're talking about is innovation and transformation. And we will be talking about entrepreneurial social work as well as telehealth in our conference. And so that will be July 15th and 16th online. So we also just had a workshop on Thursday about social work and social media, talking about social media and how social media is using to give social work and social work movement a voice. So we really are trying to connect the generational divide, as well as look as transformational work and innovation in a way we can do that. And that is from an individual level where we can learn how to grow our business, but also on a macro level where we can look at how to address these barriers that cause this disparity in businesses, because we will have business owners who have clinical practices and they're doing very well in those practices. So that will be a part of the conference, and it will be online this year. So you can definitely get an opportunity to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Terry, this is my Boston therapist. We were in a training together. You following me? Do I need that much help? How you doing? We were in a group together. You're muted. I can't hear you.
Hotep, everyone. Hotep.
Hotep, good to see you again.
Good to see everyone. So yes, everyone. I have more comments and maybe a question. So I'm Dr. Nateri Nelson, and I'm in Boston, and I'm a metaphysician, a clinician, and an educator. I've been a member of NABSW since the 80s. I've been in private practice for 3.5 decades plus. I, have worked, has served as adjunct professor at Africana Studies at UMass Boston. And I have worked in the prison system, providing psychological services, all the way into the community, teaching doctors, lawyers, nurses, teachers, clinicians. So working with folks who had nothing or very little to folks who had a lot. And I just want to give praise and appreciation because as much as I have been a part of NABSW, I have been a part of ASCAC, the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization, both being nurtured in their teachings and also presenting at the conferences. I've been a part of First World, both nurtured by their teachings and by presenting. And I just want to give praise because I can see the precipitation that things have really hit the ground here as I hear the richness and the passion, because I know of the forerunners. You know, I know of Dr. Ben who slept along the Nile with the away from the fire, which would protect the Egyptologists. They didn't want him sleeping close to them, so that he could get the knowledge as we reclaim our history. The other forerunners, because ASCAC has been a concourse of scholarship. Dr. Richard King, who I was studied with, who we were in a lodge together under Dr. Alfred Lagong. And he taught us about melanin. This psychiatrist taught this Black psychiatrist who taught us about melanin. And Dr. Asa Hilliard and Francis Quest Welsing and Dr. Ricchetti, who has been deciphering the Medjugorje, what the Greeks would later call hieroglyphics. So all of these great scholars have been making such sacrifices so that this information would be out here, our rich history would be out here. And what I say now is wisdom is wellness. It is a malpractice for us not to be teaching our clients about history. It is a malpractice. And all the books that were recommended here, highly recommended. We need to know our history in order to heal, and we need to tap into that primal source, back to the source that our African scholars have been working and writing all of these books that we may tap. And it's not what you're going to learn. I taught it UMass Boston in Africana Studies. You're limited in what you can teach. And many folks have made the point about the social work departments. Well, before you get to the social work department, there's the Africana Studies department, and how our scholars have been under siege in these departments to even permeate and trickle. As the original people, everything has to come back to those departments to make sense of anything taught in those departments, whether it's biology or chemistry or mathematics. We gave the world all of that. So we know that one labors in those social work departments because there's a massive fight in the Africana Studies department, which Dr. Jeffries has been foremost warrior scholar in. So I couldn't be on this platform and not mention these names as forerunners and fighters and mighty warriors to get to the primal source, that we can be distributors of life-giving nectar, the elixir of life to if we need a potent dose to heal, anything short of that, we don't need any derivatives, any synthetics, things that are distorted, things that are potentized to be injurious to the African consciousness. We need to go to the source. And these books that have been written in all of these schools, they're like nothing. They don't do the trick. They won't serve. So I'm so glad that this massive tapping in is happening, and I give praise to those who have been Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, but been on the forefront in providing this information. I'll pause there. Thank you.
Dr. Terry, thank you so much.
I put my book in the link too. I've written a book 20 years ago it's an African-centered model for psychological, spiritual, and character development. But it's taken time for people to be ready for this book. People weren't ready for this book 20 years ago. Afrocentric what? So we are And it's based on the wisdom that our African ancestors have left us in the books, Pertimru, foremost of which. Okay.
Dr. Nateri, I thank you so much. I mean, you bring home a very good point that we stand on the shoulder of giants. You know, this movement may be new to you, but it is certainly not new. There have been Black liberators who have been doing this work for a very, very long time. And we call out their names and we acknowledge them. And you didn't say Sister Dr. Patricia Newton, but she also was someone who talked about the trauma experience in slavery and the Middle Passages and the work that has happened here. So there is a wealth of information that is available. And it's so important that you look for this information, that you seek this information out. Wisdom is wellness is definitely something that is important to know, because you need to get the knowledge in order to be able to empower yourself. You can't empower anyone else. The only person you can empower is yourself. And when you are empowered, it equips you to fight, to help to get rid of some of these toxic systems. So I think we have one last question, and I'm gonna thank you all for your attention and your patience. And we're gonna ask this one last question and close.
That's Althea.
Oh, Nicole's not getting her question answered. Okay.
Well, I know I saw Althea's hand first. Sorry, Nicole. But put it in the chat if you can.
I'm gonna be quick. I'm gonna be quick.
Okay, Althea, thank you.
First off, Madam President, ma'am, you make me want to just drive to New York to have lunch with you because I mean, just hearing you, I've been, you know, I'm considered not polished because I speak what I see, what I hear, and I try to correct things. But I wanted to talk about the mindset of social workers, though. I think there are two mindsets that we have to get rid of. The poverty mindset is that I am not supposed to, well, I'm supposed to be destitute. I'm in a helping profession. I'm supposed to be destitute. And that's just not the case. We have to put the systems in place for ourselves. And I think someone else had mentioned investing in yourselves. What we do is an ongoing investment. It doesn't stop when you get your degree. It doesn't stop when you get your license, and you have to invest in yourself. And there are a lot of free resources. So that's an investment in itself, taking the time, but everything is not going to be free. So we got to get rid of that tax that our community put on a lot of professionals, that Black tax where you got to give it to me because I'm Black. And then the microwavable mindset, not wanting to put in the work to get it done and to make things happen. So they want it quick. And it's like, which cake gonna taste better? The one grandma used to make where she sifted the flour and put all the ingredients together and put it in the oven, or those new Dunkin' Hines things where you can just put water in a cup and put it in the microwave. So, and that's just what I wanted to, addressing what the person was talking about, making the money. The money is there, but it can't always be about the money, but we also don't have to be in a poverty mindset that we're not supposed to make money in this field. We have so many opportunities as a social worker. I created a whole conference. I started a whole Black Play Therapy Society. I do monthly Black Play Therapy workshops. It is so many things that you can do, but you have to put in the time and the effort, and you have to invest in yourself and your communities, because what we do is relational, and that has to transfer to the people that we serve. That's all I have.
And I think you bring a great point that you don't, if you're taking a job for money, then that's all you're gonna get out of it, right? You need to, you know, and it's real interesting to me. I'm not leaving my job for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. When you look at it, and this is something that we have to teach, right? That, you know, when you're getting on a job, you build tenure, you get money, you get vested into your retirement plan, you can do different things where money will come. And so, you know, we have a retirement plan and we'll match up to 5%. Most of the millennials don't even put any money in that. My dad taught me from day one, I've never known my check without what the match was. From the very first check, I make sure that I take that 5% that my company is gonna match so we can build over the years, right? So we need to learn. And when you start, and as a person who hires, when I see that every 2 years you went from this job to this job to this job to this job, that's not the kind of person that I want to subject to my community. I want somebody who is trying to build with us. You know what I'm saying? And so I agree with what you're saying. When you get confident and you know your stuff, the money will come, the money will come. And I do believe that we do have that microwave mindset. Oh, well, I'm gonna make $54,000 here, I'll make $56,000 there. Well, if you're making $56,000 there and you got a 70-person caseload, right? Would you rather make 52 and have 25 people that you could really work with and help change? So some of the questions we have to ask when we are applying for jobs is not just the money. What does it require? How do I demonstrate that I'm meeting this threshold? What is your turnover rate like? Certain questions about stability and long-term relationships on a job, and to have relationships with the people that we serve. And you know, the Social Work Parity Act is out right now because nurses, we're now realize that we're essential personnel, because when the cities open back up, nurses not knocking on doors, right? Nurses not doing home visits, right? It's the social workers that's knocking on doors, and the social workers and now they community health workers and peer support people who making $14, $15, $16, $17 an hour, and they're putting themselves at risk, right? Should we make more money? Yes. But what makes us think our clients should make less? We should be advocating for everybody to make more money, right? We shouldn't just be advocating, like, why should we be as poor as our clients? Why are our clients poor? Let's talk about that and talk about changing, because we're not trying to be better than our clients. We're trying to eliminate clients. We are trying to rid and clean toxic systems. So, you know, I just really want to emphasize and say to you all that it is imperative, it is crucial as Black social workers, we align ourselves in a manner that can help eliminate these systems. They will not change themselves. They will recreate themselves in other oppressive ways. And we need to be at those tables strictly to turn them over. That we should say, speak our truth and say to them that when you know it, in your strongest Black woman voice, say that's inaccurate. I beg to differ. The data says differently. So unless you believe there's something wrong with Black people, where we should be 13% of the population and 40% of the criminal justice system, where we should be overrepresented in the child welfare system, unless you believe, you either believe it's something wrong with the system or it's something wrong with the people. So I know that it's nothing wrong with the people, because I'm not a friendly visitor. I'm a vested member of this community, and I stand side by side with over 70 chapter presidents across the country. And I want to thank you all for your time. Thank you for your attention and expertise. Nicole, I'm putting my email in here. If there's anything that you want to ask me, you can call me and email me. I would love to talk to you about liberation. Now, don't call me don't call me telling me I got an idea, something y'all can do. I'm not taking no more ideas. The suggestion box has been burnt, right? If you want to call and talk about doing some stuff, I'm gonna put my information in there. When you call me and say, Melissa, I'm ready to do some liberation work, that's really all I want to talk about. So I appreciate you and thank you very much for your time. And National Association of Social Workers in New York, I thank you for the opportunity to reach out to people in the community and let them know that the National Association of Black Social Workers has been alive for 53 years and we couldn't be better. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you, Madam President.